Hello and welcome to the Peru Channel Podcast. I'm your host Philip, and today I'm going to do something a little bit different. First of all, I'm going to be doing this as a video podcast. You can also watch it on YouTube, but I'm going to focus on a tragic accident that occurred yesterday involving two trains colliding head-on not too far from Machu Picchu, as well as discuss some of what's been happening regarding Machu Picchu recently that continues to leave serious questions about the competence of those charged with managing the site from a tourism perspective. At around 1:20 in the afternoon, a Peru rail train on its way to Machu Picchu and an Inca rail train returning to Ollantaytambo collided head-on along a section of track somewhere about halfway between the stations in Ollantaytambo and Machu Picchu Pueblo. Machu Picchu Pueblo, by the way, is more commonly referred to as Aguascalientes, but I use both, and probably Aguascalientes is the one that I use most. Peru Rail's train was reported as being route number 602, which was probably 603, that leaves the Ollanta station at 12:30 and contained both the Vistadome and Vistadome observatory cars. Inca Rail's train was reported to be number 65. While you can't access the train numbers on their website, there is no train listed which would have normally been through the area at the time of the accident. That might make a difference, which I'll talk about in a moment. Sadly, the conductor of the Inca Rail train, 61-year-old Roberto Cardenas, was killed in the accident. Initial reports were that 30 people were injured, but now reports this morning are that the injured number is as high as 70, with at least 2 people suffering serious injuries. Cusco's regional government issued a statement late yesterday afternoon detailing their involvement, including arranging for more than 20 ambulances dispatched to the end of the road at kilometer 82 to take the injured to hospitals in Ollantaytambo. Cusco's regional governor, Warner Salcedo, was particularly concerned about what he claimed as private hospitals and clinics activating their own ambulance services to provide transportation to the injured. He questioned whether their concern was for needing care or for their own profit. Apparently, the lack of coordination and communication is a factor in getting accurate numbers on the injured. Salcedo, by the way, threatened private facilities should it prove that patients' conditions were worsened by their interventions. Cusco's Clínica Pardo, in particular, has actively promoted this morning that they had a medical team at the collision site and that they were providing care. Keep in mind that, even though this is a private clinic, the remote location of the accident site indicates that likely any kind of medical care beyond immediate first aid would probably be very welcome to victims and shouldn't be quickly condemned. Salcedo's concerns about the disorganization of the medical response might also reflect on the regional and local government's contingency plans in case of such an accident, which frankly could have been much, much worse. The actual location of the collision wasn't clear at first. Various media outlets were reporting multiple locations along the railway. The rail line is marked every kilometer from Cusco to the end of the line, about 12 kilometers past Aguascalientes, with the Ollantaytambo station located at about kilometer 65, Aguascalientes at kilometer 110, and the end of the auto access road at kilometer 82, which, by the way, is also the start of the famous Inca Trail. Since both rail companies reported this morning that the accident occurred at kilometer 94, it's probable that it was about 8 kilometers or 5 miles past the end of the road toward Machu Picchu. Based on photos of the accident site, it's a spot where the tracks curve and visibility ahead would have been severely limited to only a few meters. Obviously, there should have not been any oncoming trains to deal with at all, but fortunately it's also a spot where, on a blind curve, trains would have necessity slowed down considerably, which would have resulted in a much less violent collision. This morning, Cleto Quispe, president of the Pampacagua sector where the accident occurred, said that the Inca Rail train went through an area where trains passed without correct authorization, causing the crash. Most of the actual railroad from Cusco all the way to Machu Picchu is single track, but there are many sections where the track separates into two so that trains going in opposite directions can pass. Anyone who's taken the train to Machu Picchu and back knows that sometimes you have to sit and wait for another train to arrive and pass before you can move on. times I've had some very lengthy waits, as long as 20 to 30 minutes. I don't know the procedures and have often wondered how all of this is organized, especially considering trains have often experience short or even lengthy delays of up to several hours, which completely throws off the train schedules. According to Quispe, the Inca Rail train was ahead of schedule and, being the first train to arrive, was supposed to wait at the passing area located at kilometer 94.2, but instead the train went ahead. He also faulted whoever was responsible for communication between the two trains. He said that communication is normally done by radio, and he couldn't explain why there was either a miscommunication or a complete lack of communication. Besides the tourists stranded at the accident site, hundreds of passengers were also stranded at the stations in Ollantaytambo and Machu Picchu Pueblo. Frustrations mounted considerably last night as families were left waiting for hours with minimal information coming from the train companies and the various government entities. This morning, Peru's Council of Ministers announced that about 1,300 foreign tourists and 700 Peruvian tourists who were stranded were evacuated and that rail service was progressively restored around 5 a.m. this morning. The fact that the accident occurred at a spot where there are two tracks allowing trains to pass the accident site likely played a significant role in reopening the entire rail line for normal operations this morning. The last time such an accident occurred was on July 31st, 2018, when trains from Peru Rail and Inca Rail collided between Ollanta and Aguascalientes, also resulting in dozens of passengers being injured, and that time there were no deaths. Yesterday's accident comes at a crucial time when serious concerns have been raised in recent months regarding almost all operations at Machu Picchu regarding tourism. Protests earlier in the year caused several days of a rail shutdown over which bus company would be allowed to take visitors back and forth to Machu Picchu. That's a highly lucrative business in which people on both sides of the decision-making process reportedly had a significant financial interest. The cost of visiting the site, the poor infrastructure there, the difficulty in getting tickets, and the actual pressures that increased visitor capacity has caused damage to the actual integrity of Machu Picchu itself. There have been warnings that Machu Picchu might even lose its recognition as one of the seven wonders of the modern world due to the significant and constant problems that no one appears to want to deal with in a way that avoids politics and corruption. As Machu Picchu is probably South America's most popular destination, the amount of money involved is far, far greater than most people realize. The local office in charge of tickets was rocked by a scandal just a couple of years ago in which tickets were apparently being sold illegally by insiders to brokers who then resold the tickets, despite all kinds of protocols and prohibitions and protections against such actions. Except for the first few days of the year, each year tickets for the coming year don't even become available until after January 1st, making it impossible for people to plan their trips with confirmation that they know they have actual tickets to Machu Picchu. People trying to purchase one of the 1,000 last-minute tickets available in Aguascalientes for the following day often have to wait in long, slow lines only to find out they can't even get a ticket. Thanks to protests and the threats of eventually shutting down Machu Picchu, these tickets for the following day were put in place to placate the tourism industry in Machu Picchu Pueblo because it forced visitors to spend the night in the village, thus requiring lodging and food. As with many components of the tourism industry in the region, it had nothing to do with visitor convenience and everything to do with greed. The high cost of rail transportation has also long been a complaint. Bringing a family to Machu Picchu for even a day trip can amount to many hundreds of dollars in expenses for transportation, tickets to the site, bus tickets up and down the mountain, and food, only to face a seriously crowded Machu Picchu. Every time something like this happens, tourist associations call for improvements as the constant stream of bad news across international news media has definitely had an effect on tourism. As I mentioned before, it always seems that any movement to improve things revolves around control so that there is control of funding and the millions that flow just from Machu Picchu tourism. I talked with someone several years ago who had an intimate knowledge, and I'm not going to say who it was, but they knew what was going on at Machu Picchu, and there were always serious questions about how all the money was being utilized and where it went. For example, anyone who has traveled to Ollantaytambo from Cusco along the shorter Huaracondo route knows that the regional and provincial governments have allowed the road to become a nightmare, as the once nicely paved road has deteriorated into one of the worst roads you can imagine. It's almost impossible to drive a vehicle now without weaving back and forth among the thousands of road potholes for many kilometers. Every time I go this way, I can't help but wonder why, on probably the most heavily used route to South America's most popular destination, the government has little to no concern for spending money to create a road that, at best, is just plain embarrassing to the region. Well, that's all the information that I have now. It's going to be interesting to see if there really will be accurate findings coming from the impending investigation on this accident. Well, thanks again for listening or watching if you're seeing this on YouTube. And please consider following the podcast or subscribing to the channel. It means a lot. If you have any questions or any comments about this format, please don't hesitate. I'd love to hear what other people think, and I always want to make it better. This is the first time I've tried this, so obviously if you're listening to the podcast, you're not seeing it, but if you are watching, it means an awful lot in getting your feedback. So once again, thanks for listening, and I hope to see you in Peru soon.